You're listening to The Play Pouch. Welcome back, everyone. Today we are discussing remakes and how good they are, how bad they are, what they should be doing to please us mighty users. I'm joined once again by my fabulous co-host, Nick. How we doing, pal?
I have a new mic, everybody.
He has a new mic and it's absolutely amazing.
And it wasn't cheap, so hopefully my sound quality is nowhere near as bad as it used to be.
Yes. So, but before we carry on, if you do like our podcasts, please consider giving us a subscription, slap the bell, tickle that notification button, give us a thumbs up. Without further ado, we're just going to dive right in. Remakes, Nick. Are you for them or against them?
Well, I don't know, it depends on them, doesn't it? And the reason why this is obviously a good topic is because I have finally, to Pete's relief, started the Final Fantasy VII remake. So if there's anyone who hasn't been listening to any of our shows, it is my favourite game of all time, the original, and it's one of Pete's favourite games as well. And he's been dying for me to talk to him about it so they could do a podcast on it, and I've been a bit slow in deciding to play the game, but I finally bit the bullet, I suppose, and I am in chapter 3 and working my way through it. So it's obviously sparked some interest regarding, I think this is a good remake so far. Obviously, I've not finished it, but how many get it right and how many get it wrong? Because there's just as many who get it wrong as get it right, isn't there, really? Let's be honest.
Well, first impressions then.
First impressions, Final Fantasy. I mean, the graphics are amazing. Now, it was a PlayStation 4 game, and I am playing it on a PlayStation 5, so I've got the upgraded version. So that runs at 60 frames per second, which I'm very, very obsessed about, to the point where I can barely play games at 30. I know it sounds a bit snobbish, but it's just the way that it is. Like Starfield, for example, is at 30, and I really notice the difference. The Final Fantasy remake now is at 60 frames per second, and it hasn't lost any of its fidelity for me.
Yeah.
It still looks absolutely beautiful on my TV anyway. And no, the combat takes me a bit of getting used to, because I am used to the turn-based stuff. But there's options in the game where you can make it much more turn-based than an action game, where you just put commands in and the characters will auto attack. So you can kind of mix and match a little bit, so it's not 100% away from it being turn-based again. It's an interesting system. I just need a bit more practice at it because I'm still kind of like forgetting buttons and stuff like that.
Well, it's new for you. It feels new, right? So it's something you have to get used to. But the environments are stunning. The voice acting. The only thing that really annoys me about the voice acting is the way that the characters do their vocal reactions. They sort of right, all that shit. It's kind of annoying, but it's anime. It's anime.
It's anime. It's where they do stuff with anime. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's nice to see Tifa again, though.
Yeah, literally one of the last things I've done is met Tifa, and I mean, she walks around that place, and this place is a slums, right? It's like, Jesus, she must get hit on by every guy. No wonder she knows how to fight and everything, dude. She probably blokes off and will trying to grope her every time she goes anywhere. Dressing like that, you blame the guys, though. I mean, come on.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, that's a whole sort of like, feminist argument, I suppose, that we're delving into there. But I mean, like, it is a really fantastic game. And of course, we will discuss more about that game as
wait for me to finish it, guys, and then we'll have a big discussion about it, I'm sure.
Yeah. So remakes, I don't mind remakes. I actually kind of enjoy them a little bit. Obviously, it depends on the title, and it depends how they do it. I mean, we've got some bad examples and we've got some good examples, according to our point of view. So, I mean, we'll probably start off with the bad remake. Let's try to ignore The Last of Us 2 remake, which was recently announced. I mean, the game's less than 5 years old, bruv.
So is it just going to be updated graphics then? Surely that's all it's going to be.
Probably, yeah.
See, I don't know if I class that. I mean, yeah, that's a remaster, isn't it? When I think of remake, I think of them fundamentally changing more than just giving it a touch up. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, like we should really sort of discuss the difference between remake and remaster. But I think they've labelled it as remake. I could be wrong.
Mm.
But I think it's like completely fucking worthless, pointless.
So
Anyway, well,
they're going to change the story so that a certain character doesn't get killed really early on, and the other character becomes obsessed, and then basically all the characters end up dying or end up destroyed. Are you going to
well,
change that part?
they want to, but I don't think they will. So, yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath over that.
No, won't be.
So yeah, I mean, we'll brush over that. For me, what a bad remake was, and this is going to shock a lot of people, I'm sure, is Resident Evil 4. Now, there's nothing wrong with it per se, but I think it lost something in the transition. With the original, you had that atmosphere and you had the mood. And I think with this new one, it just feels too generic. It feels like the others, and I don't know. I think it's just because they try to make it similar um, to like the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake, and I think that's where they shot themselves in the foot. I think that the reason for that is just because with the original, it was a new format, and that's why it stood out. And the fact that they've remade it is just like, okay, it's not got the same mood or the same atmosphere at all. So I know that's probably a shock for quite a lot of people to hear, but
I mean, I haven't played any of the Resident Evil remakes 2, 3, or 4, and so I can only go on what the general consensus was. And number 2 was pretty much a smash hit, wasn't it? That was heavily thought of. The same
yeah,
Resident Evil 2 was heavily thought of, and then Resident Evil 3 they kind of screwed it up a little bit, um, didn't
yeah,
they?
they
The whole,
rushed it.
yeah, and the whole Nemesis thing, was such a big part of Resident Evil 3 with him chasing you. Apparently, that they did that very poorly, and he wasn't as menacing or as scary as he was in the original, which is a massive part of that game of you being hunted for most of the game, aren't you? Being chased.
Yeah, there were certain sort of like mechanics that they kind of missed out with him. It was he wasn't too bad. I don't think he was the major issue.
Right.
I feel like well they cut a lot out basically, and they sort of you know swapped things around and stuff like that, and it was a lot shorter. Yeah, Resident Evil 3 make is not as greatly received as the RE2 remake with my girl Claire. So yeah, and then you know RE4 is like I mean it's good, but it fell a little bit flat to me.
Now, what do you think it was missing then? What was the key thing that you think wasn't there then? Just the atmosphere.
Yeah, I just don't think the atmosphere was there, and I do just genuinely think it's down to subtle things like the original was a new style of playing Resident Evil, wasn't it? Because you didn't have the static camera like you do with the traditional ones, like Resident Evil 1 and 2, the old
Yeah.
style. It was sort of third person and it was all sort of like new. And I think that's, it had that atmosphere because it was fresh and new and people sort of got sucked into it a little bit more. But with, this new one, it felt just like the others. I don't know. I don't think I can really put my finger on it. Maybe it was the girl that you go and save.
Ashley.
Yeah,
But she in the original, she was quite annoying because it was like obviously it was more or less like a permanent escort quest, which is nobody liked escort quests, dude. So I know that a lot of people really didn't like Ashley. Whether or not she's better or less annoying in the remake, I don't know. But that was kind of the worst part of the original. I remember hearing that. I remember playing it as well a long time ago.
well, I think that was something that added to the charm. The fact that she was so irritating,
Mm.
because that added a certain dynamic to the gameplay, and you know, now it's just like she's not really that annoying at all. Um, yeah, so maybe that's got an element of it. So yeah, I mean, like, so that's. I mean, there are other remakes which I consider to be a total fucking waste of time. They've remastered. So yeah, so you've got games like Kingdom Hearts and Crash Bandicoot, which they made into a trilogy, and Tony
Yeah.
Hawk's. Complete waste of time, in as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, I understand loads of people like it, but there have been good remakes, and I'm talking Shadow of the Colossus. Specifically, at the top of my list is Demon Souls. I think that's probably the greatest remake of all time.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, hands down, hands down. If you haven't watched gameplay, then I would suggest you go and watch it. It's like Blue Point. I don't know how they managed to pull this out of the bag. It stunned even me. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, for me, yeah, it's Demon Souls, it's your Shadow of the Colossus, and then the OG Resident Evil that was remade,
Mm.
RE2, and obviously Final Fantasy VII we spoke about. But there is another, which is the Metal Gear Solids.
Yes, and they've remade that a couple of times, haven't they? I remember playing the remake on the. Obviously, I played the original on the PlayStation, and then obviously the remake was on Nintendo. I forget which Nintendo was it, GameCube or was it?
The remake.
Yeah, was it further on than that? It was
No,
later
it
on.
was GameCube. There was the first remake was on GameCube, and then they did a remake of the remake,
Yeah,
which ended up going on Xbox or something. But yeah,
and yeah, they were okay. I don't think they massively changed stuff. Of course, the graphics were updated. The problem, you know, what the problem I had with the Metal Gear games, and they've, especially the first one, was the control systems. They had
yeah,
you, they made you jump through hoops in that game to do things that nowadays you just press the left trigger to do, like aiming, like free aiming and stuff like that.
yeah.
The,
The whole tank controls were a bit
oh
janky, weren't they?
yeah, just so the control system. You know, if they remade it today, and as we know, they are remaking Snake Eater, which looks good because I probably consider that one of my favourites, maybe second favourite of the Metal Gear Solid games. So that I'll definitely be keeping my eye on that because it looks like it's going to be pretty good if they don't screw it up. Um,
That's the jungle one, isn't it?
yeah, it's a jungle one. It's a one set in like the 60s. It's a very, even though I don't consider myself really much of a James Bond fan, I didn't mind the kind of one set in that time period, and it's certainly a spin off. Not a spin off, a homage to the 60s like 007 films.
Yeah,
The way the song is, the way so it's all kind of a little bit of a kind of a nod wink wink to it. Yeah, I played the original Snake Eater. It was good. It was pretty innovative. The way that the camouflage system works. I'm not sure how realistic it was, to be fair, but I mean, it's video games.
yeah,
Yeah, the way you just change your camouflage based upon what you're on, and of course you can just change your camouflage on the fly. So in my mind, I'm thinking, so what? Snake just keeps getting undressed again and again. He's
yeah,
carrying all these different clothes with him, and he keeps just changing into these different clothes. It was a bit silly, but the mechanics are quite fun, and the bosses.
yeah,
And the thing about Metal Gear Solid games, I know this isn't a Metal Gear Solid podcast, but I do enjoy their boss fights, even though it's a bit what's the word? They're a bit campy. They are a little bit campy. Um, but
Snake,
yeah,
Snake.
it's a little bit, and the way like every single bad guy in every single game has this long drawn out story that they fill in that they've got to tell Snake about either before they fight him or as they're dying. It's always one or the other. So
Yeah,
they have to go into these long monologues about why they became the way they are and stuff like that. And it always ends up that Snake always kind of feels a little bit bad after he kills each one,
yeah,
even though they're bastards anyway, right? And they kill people anyway. He always has to kind of like contemplate what he's just done. I get it. I get it. I get it. It's Kojima. It's Kojima. But yeah. So no, I'm looking forward to Snake Eater when it comes out. Hopefully that will be a remake I can get my hands onto. And I still need to play Resident Evil 2. And Resident Evil 4, I'm currently looking for it over Black Friday. I'm like trying to find a deal for it. If I can get it a little bit on the cheap, I'll grab it. Even though I know you've kind of said it's not that good. But I mean, I only played Resident Evil 4 once a long, long time ago. to be honest, I might not even notice some of the things that they've changed. I might not even notice because I only played it through once. Whereas on Final Fantasy, I more or less notice everything they do differently so far, and that I'm like, oh yeah, that's different, that's different, that's different.
Yeah.
So
Um, yeah. I mean, like, I mean, it was really Resident Evil that started this whole remake trend with the first one.
yeah,
And they did a good job. It's just like some things have fallen flat and some things haven't. It's just like hit and miss. And I think they're still trying to. I think everyone is still trying to work out the formula behind a decent remake. But I mean, there is a big difference between the term remake and the term remastered. When we say remastered, we basically mean update the graphics, update the character models, the environment, maybe some of the mechanics, but it is just literally updating the visuals, etc. And when we say remake, it's from the ground up rebuild of the entire game. And yeah, for me, it's right at the top of that list. It's definitely Demon Souls. It's like I'm dying to play that game, and if I can find a way of playing it on the PC, I will. But yeah,
was
I
it never?
mean,
It was never ported to PC then.
no, I don't think so.
Mm.
And I don't blame Sony for keeping it exclusive to the PS4 and 5. It is a mighty fine title. Um, but I mean, when it comes to making a remake or doing a remake, one of the things I think that they shouldn't do is make it exactly the same. I think what they should do is rebuild it as it was and then tweak things. Because, like with Blue Point, they kept pretty much all of it the same. And I think they should have, tweaked things a little bit. And certainly when it comes to sort of enemy AI and certain mechanics. But then, of course, it's all down to the type of game again. The genre of game.
Do you want to know what one of the best remakes I can think of? Honestly,
Yeah.
XCOM.
Oh, now you've tickled my ball sack.
It literally just came to me, mate. I don't know why I didn't think of it.
uh,
Um,
yeah, that's a good choice. I mean, was it a remake or
it
was
was
it just a
no,
re?
no. It was a remake. Yeah, it was because mostly all the mechanics were differently. I suppose you see XCOM, the original. In case people don't know, XCOM came out in 1993, the original, right, on a PlayStation and a PC. But it didn't have really much of a storyline, so there wasn't much for them to ruin or really change with the storyline because there was no real characters. It's just like it was as simple as aliens taking over the planet, aliens are invading, and it didn't really go further than that storyline wise. Because in the original there was no storyline. Now in the remake of XCOM, they did add a storyline, but because the original had no storyline, they couldn't damage or improve or anything. It was completely a clean slate because there was nothing for them to compare it to. So the
Hmm.
original XCOM, there was no storyline, there was no characters, there was no cutscenes or anything like that. In the remake, you had Bradford, I think his name was, and a couple of other characters, Dr. Shen and stuff like that, who had. I mean, it wasn't an in-depth storyline or anything like that, but there was cutscenes and proper missions you had to go on. So they added a basic storyline to the XCOM, and then they expanded that with XCOM 2. But the XCOM Enemy Unknown remake for me was a great remake,
Yeah.
but it can survive alongside the original. Like I- since the remakes come out, I've gone because I like the XCOM games in general. I've gone back and I've played both, so I can go back and play both, and I can admire both for what they do better than each other. Like obviously graphics is not even going to be close. It's obvious that the remake's going to be much better graphically, stuff like that. But the game mechanics are very different. There's some things that XCOM did, the original does, that the remake just doesn't bother with. For example, in the original XCOM, the '93 one, you can have multiple bases any way you want. In the
Yeah.
remake, you don't get a base really. You get one base. It's more or less always the same every time. So you get all that kind of freedom is kind of gone.
As
So
the original one was a hell of a lot harder as well.
yeah, it was 100%. Yeah,
It was brutal.
yeah, yeah, and pretty much the majority of the mechanics were completely different. I will say that I do think the original was much more of a niche product, and I suppose Firaxis, who ended up being the team who remade it, um, did streamline it a bit, not too much from where it became casual. It's still XCOM's still not for casual players, but it's a more casual game. It's a more user friendly game. They do a better job of explaining the mechanics or stuff like that. Whereas the original XCOM, like I say, in '93, it was made by a much smaller company. Julian Gallop, I believe the guy's name was, some small developer in England, who actually,
Microprose, yeah.
yeah, who actually ended up making Phoenix Point a couple of years ago, which mixed results on that. It was okay. It wasn't as good as XCOM,
Hmm.
but originally it just did many different things, and I think the remake is a faithful um, replica of it, with enough differences for it to be its own game, and enough differences for where you can look at both and admire both to what they bring for the table. Some
Yeah.
people didn't like it. Some people thought it did go too far from the original, and they did think it was a little bit kind of because it was easier. And we already know that some gamers really care about stuff like that, like Dark Souls players and stuff like that. And they take a lot from that. The fact that XCOM 1 was brutally hard, and the fact that the XCOM remake was nowhere near as brutally hard. Some people didn't like that. Me, I
I,
thought it was fine.
the original was more sort of like a pure RTS, and this new one was a mixture of RTS and arcadey style, action. And when you sort of fired a shot at an alien, it would cut to a cinematic camera and stuff, and which was cool. I mean, we like all of that. There's a nice little bit of evolution to it. I think what they retained, and it was a good idea that they retained it, is the fact that you could rename your soldiers. I don't remember whether you could specifically customize the soldiers in the original, but the fact that you could customize them in the new one was just brilliant.
You couldn't really change you couldn't change their colors and everything in the original. You could change their names and you could decide which armor they had, but you couldn't like decorate the armor or anything like that. So it was mainly names.
Yeah,
And
but
soldiers did look similar, but they were randomized. And once they were randomized, you couldn't change them. Do you know what I mean?
it just adds an extra element of personalization to the game. You name all the characters after your mates
Yeah.
or whoever, and that in turn gives you more of an attachment to the game. You don't want to see these people die, or maybe you do, but it brings that extra dynamic to it, and that's why I always loved XCOM.
I can see why some people don't like it, but nah, mate, I got to be honest, I love it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it as well. And for a remake, it's I think they did it kind of fairly perfectly.
It was
Um,
really good.
yeah, I mean, if they did it 1-to-1, I don't know. I think people would just sort of complain that it was too hard and stuff. I don't know, but you know, yeah, it was a fairly perfect remake for sure.
It's one of the
And
best I can think of, Pete, when I'm thinking about a good one.
yeah,
It's one of the best that personally appeals to me.
now remakes that I want to happen right off the
Uh,
top of the bat, I'm saying,
Bioshock. I
yeah.
already know. I already knew right away, mate. I knew what you were going to say. I knew you were going to go to Bioshock.
They did, Bioshock 1 and 2 need to be remade. Hurry the fuck up, please. And Netflix, bring out the fucking Bioshock thing that you promised that you were going to do years ago. God damn it.
What TV show?
I don't know whether it was going to be a movie or what, but they announced that they bought the rights to the Bioshock franchise movie, whatever, right? And that was like a few years ago. So, come on, give me something. Um, yeah. So obviously being a fan of Bioshock, I would actually love to see a remake of that. Um,
I mean, Fallout 3 remake. I mean, I'm going over my kind of favorite games. Obviously, I already got the Final Fantasy 7, so I'm pretty lucky that one of my favorite games ever is getting that treatment.
yeah,
We'll still see how they stick the landing, because we've only seen one game out of the three that we're going to get. I haven't finished the first game. It looks good so far, but there's still two more games where they could jump the shark, so to speak. So hopefully they won't, but you never know, do you?
they won't, mate. By the time you get to the end of the first game, you'll understand why they won't. And I'm dying to discuss it. Fuck's sake. Anyway, yes.
um,
Other than Bioshock, for me, it is really things like Morrowind and, as you said, Fallout 3.
yeah,
I'd love to see a refresh of that.
yeah. I mean, the Final Fantasy X. I've gone over one of my favorite games. They've cocked teased a sequel for ages, but I'd probably just take a remake. It is my second favorite Final Fantasy game.
Mm.
Fallout 3, yeah. Mass Effect, maybe the first Mass Effect.
Oh, maybe just do the trilogy. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Just redo the trilogy. Just literally remaster it. I mean,
I,
like upgrade
I wouldn't mind
graphics.
one of the early Elder Scrolls, because I never really played them, so I wouldn't mind them grabbing like Daggerfall and Morrowind that I didn't play. I played Morrowind, but like I say, not much of, and I never touched Daggerfall, so I would be
Yeah.
all up for like one of those remakes
Oh,
that
definitely
I never
Morrowind.
played.
Yeah, they definitely need to do Morrowind, but they need to do it 1-to-1 as it is.
So, what do you think then um, is the biggest thing a remake needs to get right? The most important thing, storyline, or just graphical fidelity seems to be very high up because people have already played it, or do they need to just do they need to improve the storyline, or do they need to stay faithful to the storyline? It's two different things, isn't it?
Well, yeah, there's a number of priorities. I don't think there's a trumping priority. There's like say 3 or 4 which they have to get right. They have to nail it, and that is they have to update the graphics to the current day's standard. They have to keep the storyline the same.
So they can't innovate the story at all. That it's just got to be faithful to the original.
Yeah,
They can't add to it.
no, no. Um, and they also have to retain most of the OG mechanics. Um, really, what it is just bringing bringing it up to date to the current day in terms of visuals and graphics, and adding quality of life things. So, like, whereas before, as you said with Resident Evil, you had to jump through a number of hoops just to point the gun properly in the right direction.
Metal Gear Solid, yeah, yeah,
Sorry, Metal Gear
yeah,
Solid. They added a quality of life update where you're holding the left trigger and
yeah,
to aim. So it's things like that, and bringing everything back to Demon Souls. Blue Point had it right. They said, "Well, we don't want to change things. We want to keep it the same, but we're just updating the graphics. We're adding quality of life improvements, like you can sort of send things to a storage box if you're over encumbered and stuff like that."
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's really just getting those top 3 priorities nailed, and sending it to the QA people, and and getting feedback from them, really. So yeah, I mean, like, the, you can get it wrong, you can get it catastrophically wrong.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think is the worst one they've done? You think it's Resident Evil? Would you say what Resident Evil 4 is the worst remake you've played then?
No, I mean, like, not really, but I think they dropped a few balls on the the making of it. I don't think they realized how much of a good atmosphere the original had, and maybe there's too much graphics in the new version, where in the old version it was very bleak, very bland, and I think that's what added to the atmosphere. But
You want to know a terrible remake, Pete?
go on.
It just popped into my head. Saint Row.
I didn't even realize it was a remake. Was it
Well,
labeled as?
technically, I mean, it's technically it is. It's a reboot, isn't it? It's they're called the Saints and everything like that, but it's set in a different city, but it's still maybe it's more of a reboot than a remake, I suppose. But I don't know. It's called Saints Row. They don't call it Saints Row something else. It's still called Saints Row.
Yeah.
It's a reboot, I suppose, and but
I lost interest after the second one, mate. It just got too silly. Like thwapping people over the head with giant dildos or whatever. It's just like, what the fuck,
I'd be
man?
lying if I said I didn't enjoy the original series, but the remake, reboot, whatever, is terrible.
No, I liked Saints Row 2. It was the closest to a sort of like GTA style game. But yeah,
I suppose it's a reboot. When I'm the more I'm thinking about it, I guess it's a reboot, but more than a remaster. I suppose a remake.
yeah. What is your favorite remake, people? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like our podcasts, please give us a sub. Please tickle that notification bell and slap the thumbs up button and show us some love, give us some support. Anything else before we say goodbye?
I don't think so. Just if you're going to do remakes, yeah, mate, just honor the first game. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but I do think you need to honor. That's the word I'd use. Honor, and respect its origins.
Yeah. Give Blue Point a call and get them to tell you all about
Yeah,
it.
and don't do like we see in the movies nowadays, because I can't remember really the last remake of a movie that I thought was better than the original. So
Yeah.
don't go in that direction, you know.
Yes, exactly. All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next episode.
Take care.
Take care.